so.
Didn't I find that dog for you? I did. Oh, I'm sorry.
Want to pay the bills?
No. Hey, I just sent you the link.
Yeah, you wash your hands of it after that.
I did.
Yeah, so we're getting him dosed up on pain management, so because he's such a social and active dog that
Who's that?
so keep him drugged up and happy until he can't be happy anymore when he gets that home.
They do keep up and happy.
There's not enough.
Yeah.
There's barely enough caffeine to keep him from stabbing people.
Wow. I know that feeling. It's probably a minute now.
2 minutes already. It should be.
She knows you. She knows you, Glenn.
I should probably mute that before someone else comes in. All right. Mic's out now.
Whoa. It's crazy how fast these fires get big. Isn't it? Yesterday this one was 1,000 hectares. Today it's 20,000. That's crazy.
Is that the one I know?
That's in Ontario.
Okay. Ingolf one?
Is that
The one up in Ingolf?
Ingolf?
Yeah, that took out one of my very nice rabbits.
The opening one actually hasn't gotten that much bigger. It's the same as yesterday. But that's a deal.
Yeah.
We do have some opening statements, yes.
They will be making an open statement and then taking questions.
Okay, good afternoon. I'll start. My name is Kristin Hayward. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for the Wildfire Service with the Department of Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures. Today, my part of the briefing will focus on the current wildfire situation across Manitoba, but mostly focusing on eastern Manitoba. I'll give you a quick update on what's going on with the fires themselves, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague to discuss the emergency response. So at this time, we have a number of fires of note burning in the province. Our predominant concern is a fire on the eastern side of the province near Lac du Bonnet. This fire was started yesterday, had a lot of response on the fire, and is still considered out of control. We are also actively fighting a fire near Bird River, which is near Nopaming Provincial Park. This is a very large fire, last mapped at close to 100,000 hectares. That fire is also out of control at this time. We are also actively fighting a fire, or watching a fire, pardon me, that is actually in Ontario, near Ingolf, Ontario. And that fire is right along the Manitoba border right now with potential to impact Manitoba cottage areas potentially. So we're keeping an eye on that one as well. I want to emphasize that we're working very closely with the province of Ontario in communicating both fire behavior and as well as coordinating the response. We're fortunate to have Ontario support us with some water bomber action on some of our fires, and we thank them for that support because we know that they're also busy with their own things. We also have a fire burning still in Western Manitoba that some of you will be aware of. It's been in the media. That's Fire 4. Near the Paw and OCN. That fire right now is still considered out of control, but we are making really good progress in gaining control of that fire, so we have no significant concerns with that one at this time. In terms of the outlook, we are looking at obviously very challenging conditions. So we have hot weather right now. We have dry conditions. We have had some very windy days, and we expect that to continue, today as well as into tomorrow. There has been some mention of precipitation in the forecast. However, we are not seeing the forecasted amounts anywhere where we need them to be to extinguish the fires or make any appreciable difference in what those fires are doing. So we are going to be having another challenging day in terms of being able to fight these fires that we currently have and address any new fires that may start. I think that's all I have for now. I'll turn it over to you, Christine.
Okay, thank you, Kristin. My name is Kristin Stevens. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister for the Manitoba Emergency Management Organization. Before I get started with my briefing, I just wanted to flag that we will be holding another briefing in person here tomorrow at the same time for an update. So what I can tell you now is that at this time, there are 24 active fires in Manitoba. 6 of those fires are of note and are requiring significant and prompt response. A number of communities in Manitoba have issued mandatory evacuation notices. Currently, 5 provincial parks, 3 local authorities, 3 Northern Affairs communities, and 24 cottage subdivisions have issued mandatory evacuation orders. 6 states of local emergency have been declared. So as Kristin alluded to, we are actively responding to this wildfire season. This is an extremely dynamic time for us. We are working closely with local authorities and everyone who is participating and part of that response. And the message that we want to send out to Manitobans today is that if you do not need to be in the parks and if you do not need to be in the areas where first responders need to access, we are asking you to stay away. Staff need space to be able to respond to this event. We are very much in a live response type of situation where we're working to protect people, critical infrastructure, and property. Our message to folks who are currently in the Whiteshell area but not in an area impacted by an evacuation, our message to you is that we want you to stay alert. We want you to monitor for communication from the local authority, and we want you to follow their direction because, as I said, this is a dynamic situation. I guess now we'll open it up to questions.
Do you have an update on the size of the other fires, Lac du Bonnet, Ingolf, and the Paw and OCN?
I have preliminary figures for Lac du Bonnet. It was estimated at around 3,000 hectares. The Ingolf fire is estimated at around 20,000 hectares. And unfortunately, I don't have a current size on the fire in Western Manitoba.
What about the RM of Piney? I know there's a fire burning there, and the RM said 2 homes have been lost. So you didn't mention that one. So.
There is a fire there. There is East 57 is the fire near Badger in the arm of Piney. We've been fighting that one as well for a number of days. We have heavy equipment actively working on that fire. It also is considered out of control at this time. I don't unfortunately have current numbers on any structures lost or any other impacts of that fire though.
Why is the Lac du Bonnet one the main concern if the Nopalin one is so much bigger?
The response is based on a number of factors, values at risk in the area, but also on fire behavior. So what we saw with the fire near Nopalin yesterday was extremely volatile fire behavior, that it isn't even safe to be actioning a fire of that volatility. And so the decision was made to focus on Lac du Bonnet, where it was safer for us to respond, and there was obviously a public safety risk that we wanted to address.
So are you actioning the Nopalin fire then now, or has it changed, or is that one still just kind of, you're just gonna let that one burn?
I don't have a kind of like a real-time live update on what's going on with that fire at this time. We, throughout the day, will be adjusting our response based on fire behavior and anticipated conditions.
So how stretched thin is the emergency service right now? We know there are some firefighters from BC that went to the PA, but are we at the point where we might have to call in other boots on the ground?
Yeah, same kind of answer to the other question. It's a day-by-day decision. We are always looking to what's available across Canada and other jurisdictions. We do know that there are a number of other challenging wildfire situations happening in Canada right now. Other agencies are also dealing with the same kind of temperatures and fire danger that we are. So we are looking into what options would be available, but our focus remains right now on responding in the moment with what we have on hand.
Has there been any injuries?
Pardon me?
Have there been any injuries?
At this time, we don't have confirmed injuries related to this event.
We've been hearing some frustrated people in these areas, frustrated with the lack of up-to-date information on the provincial fire maps. Can you guys address that?
Yeah, so obviously, again, our focus is on responding in the moment. And so sometimes there is a lag in the information getting entered into a computer and put up onto the website. We do strive to keep that as up-to-date as we can. Rest assured that the folks who are immediately impacted by the situation, so whether they need to be evacuated, whether there's a risk they need to be put on alert, they are being communicated with locally, outside of anything going publicly on our fire view map.
And the conditions that have created these fires, I was actually just in Lac du Bonnet 2 days ago before this started. And it's dry up there. How prevalent are those conditions throughout eastern Manitoba and into northern Manitoba? Widespread across all of eastern Manitoba, central Manitoba into the Interlake, western Manitoba, all the way from the southwest corner all the way up north. The north has been getting a little bit of precipitation recently, but it's not much to make that much of an appreciable difference. It's still very dry. So I would say widespread across the entire province at this point.
In terms of precipitation, what would Manitoba need in order to make a dent in the situation right now?
We would need a good soaking rain, a couple of inches, a couple of days of rain to keep the humidity levels high. So we want to keep those kind of moist conditions happening, lower temperatures. Those would all help our fire situation.
Is there any concern about lightning in the days ahead?
There has been some lightning in the last 24 hours that went through the province without a lot of rainfall with it. So that is a concern and something that we are watching all the time to make sure that we are on top of anything that might have happened because of a lightning strike. There is some potential for storms in the forecast in the coming days as well. So obviously the lightning would continue to be a risk with any of those that pass through.
There's a lot of large fires on the go right now. Is there anything unprecedented or different or unique about this current situation compared with previous situations?
It's hard to answer that question now because we're not seeing a typical fire season anymore. Typically, we wouldn't be seeing a lot of this level of activity happening until later on in the summer. We deal with a short kind of grass fire season before things greened up and then have a little bit of a break before the forest fires started. But we are seeing that our seasons are starting a lot earlier. We're out on the landscape fighting forest fires probably a month earlier than historically we would be used to.
Why would that be? Is it
It could just be, weather patterns are certainly a contributing factor there. The amount of moisture that we have going into the season plays a big factor. So we have had a number of years where we've had dry conditions in the fall that don't lead to a lot of recharge in our watersheds. So that's obviously one of the factors.
Can you talk about cause? I know the two kind of in the Interlake area there say natural, but every other fire is listed as human. So just what do each one of those mean?
So natural causes is lightning is really the main factor there. Human cause could be either intentional or unintentional accidental starts. So things like burning in a burning barrel and some of the garbage flies out of the barrel and starts a grass fire. It could be using an ATV in a very dry area and a spark could ignite dry grasses. It could be people burning in conditions that they shouldn't be. So it could be, burning leaves or grass in your yard when it's hot and windy and that fire has a chance to escape. So there's a lot of ways that it could happen that are not intentional by any means, but certainly are something that people always need to be considering, when they're looking to undertake starting a fire, what potential would this have to escape?
And what about the heroics that goes into fighting these fires? Like you see these videos of these fires and they're scary and people's houses are burning down. What are the crews doing? Like what lengths do they go to? Like we heard that there was a big ditch that was dug really quickly to create kind of a barrier. Just can you explain what's happening out there?
So I can focus from like a wildfire service response. Local fire departments would have different techniques that they would use, but I can't speak to those. From a wildfire perspective, we obviously have a number of different methods of controlling a fire. So you'll see the water bombers and helicopters with bucketing attacking the fire. The ground crews use a number of different types of tools to create fire breaks, to actually dig down into areas where there's fuels burning and like extinguish them by hand. We use heavy equipment to push down any fuels that might be in the path of the fire to create like a fire break or a fire guard. There's lots of different methods that we would use depending on the situation.
Was a ditch dug at that Lac du Bonnet fire to protect homes? Or can you tell us if that actually happened?
I don't have that information today, no.
In terms of the causes of these bigger fires, what caused them?
These fires, I believe, are all still under investigation. I don't have specific details on what started these ones at this time.
And is it known so far, I know it's like a really rapidly developing situation in some places, but is it known so far the number of evacuees?
That's information that we're still working to gather. Folks received evacuation notice and had to evacuate within 2 hours in some areas, so many drove out on their own. So we're continuing to register folks who have evacuated. In fact, we would like to say that if you've evacuated from an area and haven't registered yet, we would appreciate for you to register with the local authority or at the reception centers that have been set up, just so that we have a better sense of evacuee numbers.
Is there any idea of potentially the number of structures that have been lost in some of these bigger fires?
At this time, our focus really is on the response phase. The area is unsafe. We are working to make sure that we are fighting the fire, protecting people, infrastructure, and homes and cottages. So at this point, no, we don't have a sense of that. It'll take some time.
And just regarding the fire near Nobling, what made it so volatile yesterday and potentially into today as well?
The conditions were really challenging. So it was the high temperatures, very high winds, and just overall, just the general dry conditions that we were looking at.
Is that common? I guess, how common is it for a fire to get to the point where it's not safe to respond at all? Is that something we see frequently?
Yeah, we do. We can see it, every year we see a number of fires like that. And so they might even throughout certain periods of the day have different varying levels of intensity. And so we might respond and then back off and then respond again later. So it's always changing.
At what point would Manitoba get involved in the in-Gulf fire? Like, is it and if it crosses the border?
So we work really closely whenever we have a fire along a border with the neighboring jurisdiction, and so we will work together if they have resources out on the fire, water bombers or helicopters. We'll make sure that we're using those resources effectively. If they're already out there, they, don't know necessarily where that provincial line is. It's not like they wouldn't drop on the Manitoba side, and vice versa. So we're just always in constant communication and keeping each other apprised of what's going on.
And can you just talk to the scale of how, quickly and how big this is? We were just looking at some maps, and some of our fires here look like the largest ones burning in North America right now. But that's just from what we can see.
I can't comment specifically on the current situation really broadly. I can say that Manitoba is one of the most active jurisdictions right now in Canada in terms of the complexity of the fires that we have. There's certainly been fires in other provinces as well, and some that have impacted communities as well.
I think you alluded to it a little bit, but it is a long weekend coming up. A lot of people like to go to these parts of the province. So a lot of people are going to be worried about their cottages. In terms of people that have assets in these areas or investments, in terms of, I expect the message is please stay away.
At this point, we haven't decided to close the park or provide that kind of direction, but our message is that if you don't need to be there, please stay away for now. First responders need space to respond. We need to be able to get equipment in and out. So if folks don't need to be out there this weekend, our request is that they do stay away for now.
That park being Nopaming or just any park?
Nopaming Park provincial park is closed. It's evacuated, but when we're thinking about the Whiteshell area, certain sections of the Whiteshell remain open at this time. We're just asking folks, to be mindful of the fact that there's an active operation in close proximity to some of those open areas.
Have there been any examples of people getting in the way in areas where they shouldn't have been?
Not to my awareness.
In that Interlake area, there's lots of little pockets of water. Does the fire jump? Is that common, or does that help having those bodies of water there?
Depending on how intense the fire is burning and how much wind is behind it, it certainly can jump. I don't have a specific detail. That'd be something my team would have to answer. But a river, a creek, a small water body is not a barrier necessarily to a fire.
And can you give us maybe a sense of, if we're focusing a lot obviously on seasonal and permanent residents in those areas, the commercial operations that have been disrupted. Can you give us a sense of the type of operations that have been disrupted, whether it's lodges or mining, forestry?
We can provide that information after. I don't have an update on that right now.
Can you speak at all, I guess, to just the impacts on frontline staff who are fighting these fires and helping to coordinate efforts to do that and also support evacuees? Just how many days in a row they've been working, and the long days I can imagine that they've been doing.
You want me to take that one?
You can take it.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah, certainly it has been a long period where we have been responding to fires in the province. Staff deal with pretty high pressure situations. They are prepared for that, but it's certainly, it can be stressful and tiring on staff, when we see a long stretch like this.
How long could, I know you don't have a crystal ball in front of you, but just based on what we know with the way the conditions are and the short-term forecasts, how long potentially could this go on for? And there's still risks of new fire starts as well.
Like you said, I don't have a crystal ball. It's pretty tough to tell what's going to happen. We are always prepared, though, to not only fight the fires that we have right now, but also to respond to any new ones. So, we're constantly evaluating and responding to whatever might happen. So,
I understand there's some questions on Zoom.
Yes, thank you very much. We are going to be turning it over to two reporters that are joining us on the line here this afternoon. We're going to be following our usual one question, one follow-up approach. And I'll start today with the Brandon son, Connor.
Hello, thanks for taking the questions. Any plans for evacuees to come to Brandon?
You know, I'm not certain at this time what the plans are. You know, we are constantly coordinating and looking at availability of hotels. So, you know, I can't comment on that at this moment.
Okay. Last year, we had about 1,000 evacuees from the north area of Manitoba and Brandon here. That was deeper into the summer, I guess, but I'd just like to ask, when does Brandon become part of the equation for accommodating evacuees?
You know, that's a challenging question because so much of it has to do with the dynamics of the events that we're managing and where they're occurring and the volume of evacuees. So there isn't really a black and white answer to that, unfortunately.
Okay, well, up next from the Steinbach Carillon, Svetlana.
Hi, thank you. I'm just wondering, in Piney, there's been a number of evacuations happening. Will there be any supports for those people who are evacuating their homes?
Yes, there are supports available to people who are evacuating their homes. We have emergency social supports that are in place. So if folks do require support, if they've been evacuated, they can contact their local authority who will ensure that they're connected with provincial supports.
Thank you.
You have a follow-up question, Svetlana?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, that's all from Zoom. We'll send things back to the room.
So are you able to give us an idea of you know, how many firefighters are involved right now in the response, and any other officials as well who are involved?
It's so dynamic that it's really difficult for us to give any specifics on that because it can change, you know, all the time.
And maybe it's too soon to begin this, but will there be a disaster financial assistance program after this?
We're still very much in the response phase, and we're, you know, still working to ensure life safety for this event. So we'll be investigating that further as time passes.
I don't know if you can address this as well, but obviously another impact is wildlife. You know, can you speak a little bit to that and just in terms of the wildlife losses?
No, I can't speak to that, unfortunately.
And the list, or sorry, the number of communities or areas that you mentioned that have had evacuation orders, is it possible to get a list of all of those?
Yes, absolutely. We can follow up on that.
Thank you.
What populated parts of the Lac du Bonnet area are at highest risk or have already kind of been, because we heard like Wendigo Bay, I think is one of the areas. Are there other potentially populated areas?
No, we don't have updated information on that at this time as staff are still assessing today's situation.
And the Nopaming fire, would the precipitation be enough to make that fire actionable? Like, it might not put it out, but it might be enough to get people up there, or like, how do you monitor that?
Yeah, well, we monitor throughout the day, every, morning, evening. We're always looking at the weather forecast and what's happening and what's actually falling for precipitation on the fire. Just because some precipitation came through doesn't necessarily mean it happened on the fire. So, staff are constantly looking at and evaluating whether it's safe or not for us to action. So, unfortunately, I don't know what we're going to get for precipitation, so it's kind of tough for me to be able to answer that question.
And just to clarify, sorry, is that still the case today then? Is there any equipment or any crews attacking that fire today?
Yeah, I don't have information on specifically what's occurring at this moment, no.
And just in terms of that one, so it's not being actioned, I guess, is how you phrased it. But those areas, everyone's gone, right? Like those areas have been evacuated, yes. And there would be really no one left behind. Is that fair to say? As far as we. Yeah, as far as we know.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thanks, guys.